guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, The Bright Side Girl, and today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite audiobook narrators. I am a co-host for the audiobook-a-thon, which is coming up. It will be March 8th through the 21st. I will link it up here in the cards so you guys can check out that announcement video. There are fun challenges, and basically it's a 2-week-long readathon where you only have to listen to audiobooks. What could be easier? Nothing. So I have a lot of audiobook content coming out to kind of help you build your TBRs and inspire you to maybe try audiobooks for the first time if you haven't already. I do have a video on how to get audiobooks that I will link again up here in the cards if you guys want to check it out. I personally mainly listen to Overdrive and Hoopla, which are both free. They're both connected to the library. I think this is the best way to get your audiobooks. I know that even in smaller towns that don't have quite as big of a catalog, you can still listen to a ton of audiobooks. There are also some other options as well, like Scribd and Audible and Chirp. I'll be talking about all these again. I'm going to be redoing that how to get audiobooks video. But for now, we're going to talk about some of my favorite narrators. So most of the time when I'm choosing books, I choose it based on hype, recommendations, or my own personal interest. But sometimes I actually choose it based on the narrator because I have become to love some of these narrators so much for whatever reason that I will actually click on their name in Overdrive or in any kind of app. The narrator's name will be highlighted and you can click on it and it will show you everything that that app or service has that has been narrated by that narrator. So sometimes I will go and click on their name and actually request books based on who narrates it. Sometimes I will hold off on physically reading a book if I know favorite narrators narrates it because I enjoy them so much. I think a really good narrator can totally make the book even better than it would be if you physically read it because they did such a good job. That being said, a bad narrator can also break the book for you. So if you are not enjoying a book you are physically reading, check out the audiobook and see if you like the narrator. On the other hand, if you are not enjoying an audiobook, check out the physical book and see if maybe it's the narrator that's bothering you. But a good narrator is just the best. So we're going to talk about a few of my favorites here. I do own a lot of these books, but I didn't want to go and grab them all, so I'm just going to put the pictures up here. So first up, we're going to talk about Jim Dale. And he was the first narrator that I actually fell in love with because he narrates the Harry Potter books. I know that Stephen Fry also narrates the Harry Potter books. I have not listened to those, but I just have a really hard time believing that he could beat Jim Dale. I know there's like battles between this. I will check it out at some point. But Jim Dale narrating Harry Potter was such an amazing experience to me. I had read the first 4 books and I think I was in my early 20s at the time. The 5th book came out and I had work, I was in a play, and there were so many things going on I was not able to sit down and read it. So I got the audiobook from the library and I was so blown away with how good Jim Dale narrated it that it actually distracted me. It was actually like bad while I was driving. I should not have been driving while listening to Order of Phoenix because it was dangerous because Jim Dale was so good and so put me in my head that I wasn't paying attention as much as I needed to be. I would literally gasp and be like scared, and I loved it. All of his different voices are so phenomenal and I loved them so much that I actually went back and started the entire series over via audiobook, prepare for the 6th book, and then I did the 7th book with my good friend Hannah. I think I have a video on that experience. I'll link that up here in the cards. We actually binge listened to, we did the original readathon, but with an audiobook. We listened to the entire 23-hour audiobook in one sitting. Jim Dale's the best. At the time I had listened to quite a few other things from him. Honestly, I can't remember them all because it's been I don't know, 15 years, but one of the ones I really remember is Peter and the Starcatchers. This is a 5-book series, again a middle grade series. I picked this up purely because Jim Dale narrated it and I'm so glad. It's one of my all-time favorite series. It is a retelling of Peter Pan, kind of an origin story. It is so magical and so fun and the twists and turns are so great. Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson do a great job writing it and Jim Dale does an amazing job narrating it. Oh, so good. I loved it. It's one of my husband's all-time favorites. Now he's a big Jim Dale fan as well. We just completely love him. I will say the only downside with Jim Dale is that he is so distinctive in his audiobook narrations that he is not one that I like to binge listen to. I like to have a few books in between listening to one from him because he solidifies the characters and the voices so much in my brain that if I listen to one right after the other, I kind of mix up the characters in my head, especially if they're similar in nature, because he's so distinctive. So I like to listen to several other narrators in between listening to Jim Dale if I'm gonna do that, just because I don't like to get things mixed up. That's the only downside for him. So a couple things that I haven't listened to from him that he narrates. So he apparently narrates Peter Pan, which is great. I would love to listen to that. I love Peter Pan, and I have never listened to an audiobook, and I love reading and rereading classics via audiobook, so I might check that one out soon. Narrates The Christmas Carol, which again I need to check out because I know The Christmas Carol almost word for word. I did a Christmas Carol like reading play where we like stood and read the story but like acted it out, and I'm just really familiar with the story, and Jim Dale seems like he'd be perfect for that. And then he also narrates The Night Circus, which is great. I don't think that I want to listen to him do it first. I think I actually want to physically read it. I don't know why. I get in my head where certain things I'm like, I just want to physically read this and then I can listen to it later if I like it. But those are just a few of the options. He narrates a ton of stuff. He has tons and tons of options for you guys, and he's probably one of the easiest ones to find across all the boards, all the libraries and everything. So he is definitely one of my favorites. Next up, my pretty much all-time favorite girl narrator at the moment is Rebecca Soler, or Rebecca Soler. I was first introduced to her when I listened to The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. So Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, and Winter, and also she does the novellas, which is Fairest and Stars Above. She actually narrates all of Marissa Meyer's books, and of course, I binged them all. So I listened to all the Lunar Chronicles, and then I did Heartless, and then I did Renegades, and then I kind of had a break in between Renegades and Arch Enemies and all that stuff, but I loved them. She is so good. She is so fun. She has a very distinctive voice that makes it excellent to do male and female voices really, really well and distinctly. Sometimes with our narrators, if they don't change their voice enough, it's hard for you to know which characters are happening, even if it says so-and-so said or whatever. I love her. I think she's great. She's so fun. So she narrates all of Marissa Meyer's books, and then of course I had to go and find other things narrated by her. She narrates Undead Girl Gang. This is pretty much the only reason I picked up this book. This one was kind of polarizing for me. Like, I really liked it, but then I didn't like it at the same time, but it has a great plot twist. She narrates Jane Unlimited. Again, not sure how I feel about this one. It was very strange, but it was still really fun to listen to. It's got like different dimensions and things. I will say that you miss a couple things with this one because there's pictures and things in the book that kind of help you distinguish the different timelines a little bit easier than just listening to the narration. So I got a little bit confused, but I still thought she did a great job. Narrates Atlantia, which is one of my all-time favorite books. It's kind of got mermaidy vibes. It's like Atlantis, underwater city, sirens, and then there's like the land above that takes care of the underwater city. It's kind of dystopian. It's kind of almost mermaidy. It's fabulous. She narrates Nimona, which is one of my all-time favorite graphic novels. I highly recommend either reading Nimona first and then listening to the audiobook, or doing them together, because of course you're gonna miss all the graphics if you just listen to the audiobook. But Rebecca Soler pinpoints Nimona's personality like perfectly, and this one also is a full cast, so you get sound effects and you get lots of different voice actors, and it was so amazing. And it's only 3 hours, so it's fabulous for a readathon. Highly, highly recommend it. She also narrates The Hazelwood, which I have mixed feelings on. I really liked her narration, as always, but the first part of this book's kind of different than the second half, and I like the second half better, so I'm curious to listen to Night Country, which she also narrates, and see how I feel about this like duology companion series, but still worth a try. So those are all the books that I have tried from her. So these are some other ones that I'm kind of curious to check out that she also narrates. So we have Star Wars: A New Hope by Alexandra Bracken. I know that she is probably one of the narrators in this book. I have a ton of Star Wars books, and I don't know why. I haven't even caught up. I'm like 4 movies behind, but I just keep buying all the Star Wars books and thinking like, yeah, I need to read this. So maybe I need to check out the audiobook. I did listen to Sadie, which she narrates with Dan Bittner, who I'll talk about later on, and I will kind of go into depth more in this, but she's one of the narrators for Sadie. It's also kind of has a full cast vibe, which is great. She also narrates the Seafire series slash trilogy, which is Lady Pirates, which sounds great, and I need to get to that one soon. And then she narrates Empress of a Thousand Skies, and that really gets me excited. I really need to listen to that one. I haven't listened to her do a sci-fi in a while, so I'm really excited to jump into another one. So next up, we're going to talk about Dan Bittner. I was first introduced to Dan Bittner when he narrated the Renegade series with Rebecca Solar, who I mentioned earlier. He narrates Renegades, Arch Enemies, and Supernova. He is the voice for Adrian's sections, and he's fabulous, and they worked so good together. They're like this nice little like narrator couple. I know they're not together like in real life, but I want them to be in my head. They are so good together, and they just flow really nicely, and it just works so good. He is just such a good narrator. I can't even tell you why. He's one of the only male narrators that I enjoy that doesn't have a British accent. Same for Rebecca Solar. I feel like if you have a really good British English accent, I will like you. But Rebecca Solar and Dan Bittner both have standard American accents, and I love them. They can do tons of voices. They're super good. He does pretty good with his girl voices as well. He narrates all the Renegade series. I also listen to Frozen and Stolen by Melissa De La Cruz. He narrates those with, I think, Phoebe Schroll, who I'm kind of like on the fence about. But those were just very fun. You have to suspend your disbelief because it's just literally just like fun and wacky fantasy story. I really enjoyed it though. It's set like in an all just kind of dystopian frozen world, and there's like magic and dragons and stuff. So I did enjoy that one. He was great. He narrates The Bone Gap, which is one of my all-time favorite contemporaries with a little bit of magical surrealism. They're like two boys in a small town, and they have this friend that they've come to love, and she kind of goes missing into like this alternate world, or they're not sure if it's an alternate world. It was so magical and wonderful, and he like solo narrates that book, and it was great. He also narrates Forever and Linger, which is the third and like the fourth book in the Shiver series trilogy, which was really helpful because I actually didn't enjoy this series very much, but Dan Bittner's narration kind of pushed me through to finish it. So I did really like his narration, like really helped me out. So I was kind of glad that he did those. And then again, like I said earlier, he narrates Sadie with Rebecca Solar and a couple other people. This is a very well done audiobook. There are podcast sections, which is what Dan kind of does, and there are the sections where you're hearing from Sadie, and then you're getting newspaper clippings and all that kind of stuff. It's a very well-rounded audiobook. It was a little bit too dark and intense for me, so I did wind up DNFing it despite how wonderfully it was done. I might listen again in the future. I had just been listening to a lot of dark audiobooks for the fall, and it's about a girl's sister who gets murdered, and they're trying to find out what happened, and it was a little bit too much for me, a little too dark, but I did enjoy like the narrators and the way that it was crafted. Some things I'd like to listen to from him are Vanishing Girls by Lauren Oliver. A little scared about this one because it's kind of got the same vibe as Sadie, like one of the girls goes missing or something, but I'm willing to give it a shot at some point because I love Lauren Oliver and I love Dan Bittner. Where She Went by Gail Forman, again, I think has a similar tone to it, but I'm willing to try and check it out because I haven't read Where She Went or If I Stay or whatever by her. And then he narrates the second book in the Sky in the Deep series, which is Girl the Sea Gave Back. He is a co-narrator, and so I want to check out this series as well, but I have to listen to book one first. Next up, we are going to talk about Elizabeth Nolden. So Elizabeth Nolden stole my heart when I listened to Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge. So this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it is very like lyrical and magical and romantic and beautifully written. And Elizabeth Nolden was the perfect narrator for this. She has a lovely, soothing voice, British accent. It is just so calming. It keeps you sucked in at the same time. It's not boring in any way, but it's very like soothing and methodical and just beautiful. And so I love this story and her narration so much. I was just like blown away with how different her voice was and how great she was, that I listened to Crimson Bound, which is the second book, kind of set in a similar world, but it's another retelling about Red Riding Hood. Both of these are fabulous. She might knock Rebecca Soler off her pedestal because I just love her so much. So last year I also listened to The Apprentice Witch, which is a cute little middle grade series about a girl who's apprenticing to be a witch, and she kind of gets a town and she has to be the witch for that town and like help take care of them, and it was adorable and I really loved it. Is one of the narrators for Four Dead Queens, which was one of the most surprising books that I enjoyed last year. It's like fantasy sci-fi, like you think it's gonna be all like fantasy, matriarchy, and it is, but then there's all these like weird sci-fi elements in it, and I loved it. And I loved her being one of the narrators. She was one of the queens, I think. It was really, really great, and I was just so glad that she was in that. And then she is also one of the narrators for Sea Witch Rising, which is the second book in the Sea Witch series, which I'll talk about a little bit later because I have the other narrator that I'm going to mention as well. So those are the only ones I've listened to from her, but I absolutely adored them all, and she's part of the reason. Some other things from her that I want to check out are Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White. I actually just received this book in a trade, so I'm kind of torn about listening to it or reading it because I love Elizabeth Nolden so much, and she's just so good at this style of book with like the fantasy, girl power, and the swordplay and all that stuff. I'm curious to check out this one. Let me know if you guys enjoy this one if you have listened to it recently. She also reads Damsel by Elena K. Arnold. This is one I'm curious about as well that I'm also getting it on a trade soon. I think this one's gotten pretty mixed reviews, so I'm leaning towards listening to this one on audiobook more because the reviews aren't that good. So I was just like, well, I won't waste my time like physically reading it. I'll just listen while I do other things. So next up, we're going to talk about Tim Gerard Reynolds. I actually have only listened to 3 books narrated by Tim, and they're all in the same series. So he narrates the Red Rising trilogy / series, and he absolutely completely blew me away when I listened to these. They are so fun and so well written and awesome. They are adult sci-fi dystopian, so kind of keep that in mind. They're definitely a little bit more brutal and intense than your YA reads, and they're very long audiobooks. And he literally was so great because he can go from having like a Scottish accent to being a Valley girl. It was so impressive to me how many accents and personalities and all kinds of stuff that he could do, and just the way that he even was like sarcastic or funny was just, you could tell all the characters apart so easily. And this is a very large cast of characters in this world, and he made me fall in love with every single one of them, and it was just so impressive. I really want to check out more stuff from him because I was just like, oh, he's so freaking good. So that I've only listened to the first 3 books, which is a complete trilogy, and then it kind of continues on in the future, and I really need to get my ears on that next set because one of my all-time favorite series ever, and Tim is phenomenal. He would literally, I would just be listening and I would like round the corner and be like, what just happened? And Tim Gerard just made this experience like so fun, engaging, and these books I listened to, they're like 18 hours, and it felt like 3 hours. They're just so fast to listen to, and they didn't feel like they were dragging on, and part of that's just the book themselves is really good, but also part of that is Tim. Some other things that Tim narrates that I would like to listen to are The Infernals by John Connolly. This is the second book in Samuel Johnson versus the Devil series, the first one being The Gates. I think this is middle grade, I'm not entirely sure. I've read the first book physically and via audiobook. Loved it. It's one of my favorite Halloween reads. Boy trick-or-treating, and he finds out that his neighbors have opened the gates to hell, and he kind of has to like save the world. It's really, really great. And there's a second book in the series, which I'm really excited about, and Tim narrates it, so I'm even more excited to listen to it. Also, I'm curious to listen to A Song for No Man's Land. I know nothing about this, but the cover looks awesome, and with the way I know that Tim narrates, I feel like it's going to be perfection. He also narrates Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, which I do not know if I'm going to like that, but I'm willing to try it out. I'm really excited about it because I haven't listened to them on audiobook before. Again, rereading classics is so much fun, so definitely going to check these out for sure. And then lastly, we're going to talk about Billy Fulford Brown. So I was first introduced to Billy when she narrated the House of Furies trilogy, which I still have to complete the last book in this trilogy. One of the most underrated trilogies, fantasy series, gothic horror on BookTube. I think this is such a phenomenal series. It was so good. I was so surprised with how good it is and how I've literally heard no one talk about it except for people outside of the BookTube community. So this is like gothic horror. This girl who's kind of like down on her luck, and she doesn't have like much money or anything, ends up jumping in a cart with this old lady who takes her to this special manor / house to work there and get some money and kind of get back on her feet. And she finds out all this mysterious things that are happening in the house and weird things about the owner, and she makes friends, but she's also introduced to like some magic and some fae things, and oh, it's so good. It's so incredible, and Billy does such a good job narrating. Oh, I love her. I love her. She's just fun and great, and every time I listen to her, I enjoy her so much. She also is the main narrator for Sea Witch and Sea Witch Rising that she narrates with Elizabeth Nolden. When I found out that Billy was narrating with Elizabeth Nolden for Sea Witch Rising, I like lost my marbles, because the two of them plus that book were just, it was so good. Mermaids and two of my favorite narrators. It was such a pleasant experience. It was so much fun. Just does such a great job. There's nothing about her that I can pick up that's like distinctive to her, other than I know it's her when I listen to her, but I just really enjoy her. Like, I don't have any particular thing that she does that's better than other people, other than that she's just really good at narrating. So some things from Billy that I haven't listened to yet are Foxheart by Claire Legrand. This is a middle grade fantasy adventure comparative to Howl's Moving Castle. A 12-year-old named Quicksilver who has a companion dog and a fox, and she steals things and goes on adventures and things like that. That's all I know, and that sounds great, plus Billy narrates it, so I'm in. She also narrates The Glass Spare by Lauren DeStefano, which I am so wanting to get into because I really enjoyed Lauren DeStefano's writing style, except that it's kind of slow and dull. I don't know why I enjoyed it, but it is kind of slow, so I'm excited to listen to it on audiobook because I think it'll be more of a pleasant experience, because I've only listened to one trilogy from her, and I think that I like her writing, but it also, just like I said, is a little bit of a slower thing, so I want to check out this one, and I know she narrates the whole series. Okay, you guys, so that is all for now. I have a lot of other favorite narrators that I have not mentioned in this video that I will talk about in future videos if you guys liked this style of video. I will also be doing a narrator spotlight video when I have listened to at least, I don't know, 10 if they have it, of a certain narrator. Almost there with Rebecca Soler. I'm not sure if I have read 10 from her or not. I think I have. And so I'll do a narrator spotlight, and I'll just go into depth a little bit more about each story and things that I like about her. So let me know if you guys are interested. Let me know if you're participating in Audiobookathon and what you're ready to dive into. Let me know if you guys have some favorite narrators that I didn't talk about here, if you're excited to try them out, if you liked any of these narrators I mentioned. Like I said, I get all of my books from Overdrive and Hoopla, which is a free service through the library. Most libraries have Overdrive. Not as many have Hoopla, and they do have different things. So if your library gets Overdrive and Hoopla, get them both, because there will be different stuff on each one, and they're a little bit of a different service. But I'll be talking more about that in upcoming videos, so just stay tuned. Thanks guys so much for watching. See you guys next time on The Bright Side. Bye!